ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। न वयं प्रभवस्तां त्वाम् अनुकर्तुं ग्रहेश्वरी। Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Queen of the home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done, even if we were worked for our entire life or even after death. To repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Purport. So much glorification of a woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or is talking lightly in joke. Kashyapa meant that the householders living with wives enjoy the heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment, at the same time have no fear of going down to the hell. The man in the renounced order of life has no wife and may be driven by sex desire to seek another woman or another's wife, thus go to hell. In other words, the so-called man of the renounced order who has left his house and wife goes to hell if he again desires sexual pleasure, knowingly or unknowingly. In that way, the householders are on the side of safety. Therefore, husbands as a class cannot repay their debt to the women either in this life or in the next. Even if they engage themselves in repaying the women throughout their whole lives, it's still not possible. Not all husbands are able to appreciate the good qualities of their wives. But even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. Such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mode of joking. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So Kashyapa Muni is continuing the glorification of his wife. Says to repay you is not possible even for those who are admirers of the personal qualities, even if we work for our entire life or even after death. So Prabhupada says that such glorification of woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or talking lightly in joke, one of these things. So here what Kashyapa Muni is describing is also not the exact purpose of or is not the exact license permitted by the Grihastha Ashrama, simply to enjoy heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment in the Grihastha Ashrama. Of course, there is some protection in Grihastha Ashrama, but that is with respect to sin and no sin of this world. But with respect to self-realization, whether one is in Grihastha Ashrama or in Brahmacharya Ashrama or any ashrama, Sannyasa Ashrama, self-control, as we discussed yesterday, is a common thread. It is not that there is a relaxation for self-control in the Grihastha Ashrama. Prabhupada explains here in the Bhaktivedanta purport in Bhagavad Gita that even in royal roads there can be accidents in the sense that even though there is a license for some sense gratification in the Grihastha Ashrama, one has to be very careful. The instruction, simultaneous instruction is there that one should not get attached to such sense enjoyment. Without getting attached, one has to execute his duties. Let's say for procreation, let's say for bringing up the children. There is love, affection, sex, all these things in the Grihastha Ashrama. But there is a higher purpose to all these things. If that purpose is forgotten, then again there is a complete fall down in the Grihastha Ashrama. Because ultimate goal of human life or ultimate goal of every kind of license for sense gratification in the Vedas for each varnas and ashramas, that license is actually a restriction. Ultimate goal of human life is to disidentify with this body, which means to become free from all kinds of sense gratification. If you go out of the bodily concept of life, then where is the senses and sense objects? Both vanish. Because of the identity, I am the body, my senses come into picture. So the goal of life is to get out of the bodily concept of life, but as long as if we are engaging in sense and sense gratifications, meeting of the senses and sense objects, thinking that this is my senses and I am the enjoyer, then that is not going to relieve us from this bodily concept of life. So that is against the process of self-realization. Because the ultimate goal of human life, ultimate self-interest, swagati, swarthagatihi, what is one's actually goal of life is Vishnu. Swartha. What is my ultimate welfare is Vishnu. He is to go to Vishnu. He is to give up this material body and acquire my own body, my spiritual body. That is the goal of life. When that is the goal of life, whatever license is given in each ashram, one should not think that now this is a license, let me go and freak out on it. That is never the prescription by any of the, it's not the prescription in any of the Vedic instructions. So that misunderstanding should be taken away from our mind. So if I am a grihastha, then I can have unrestricted enjoyment, unrestricted love, unrestricted affection, unrestricted sense enjoyment. No. A person who understands the ultimate goal of life is Vishnu, then he regulates his attachment, love, affection, everything he regulates. Because he knows that it is all temporary. It cannot go on for long. It's a journey beyond this life. This life is not the journey, is not the goal. The goal is, this life is a journey. The goal is something else. The goal is to go back to Krishna, go back to the Lord, go back to the transcendental world, and engage in devotion service of the Lord. So, that we have to remember that any of the sanctions that are given in different ashramas cannot be exceeded without, or cannot be indulged in without understanding the basic principle. Then that grihastha becomes a grahamedi, or becomes something which is, violates the very purpose of grihastha life. No doubt there is some kind of a protection from sins and no sins, or if one is in an ashrama and he breaks the rules of the ashrama and then there is a sin. With respect to sin, yes, there is a protection against, being in a grihastha ashram gives one's protection against a lot of sins. Provided he is restricting himself to his wife and sees everybody else as one's mother, then one can be said to be sinless, even though he is engaging in some sense gratification. So just see how strict it is, all these things. Even in a grihastha ashram, things are, if you have to be properly situated, then that is also not easy. It is an austerity. It is an austerity. Because if senses are let loose, then no ashrama will help us. In every ashrama, We have to have self-control. Because lust is the cause of our bondage in this material world. As long as we think we have our own senses, I am this body, I have my senses, I have to enjoy my senses. Each time you enjoy your senses, you are reinforcing the idea that I am this body. As long as you reinforce this idea that I am the body, automatically, because the body does not appear to have connection with God. Soul is eternally connected. But the body, if you see with your senses, it looks independent. Where is God? So this bodily concept of life, I am this body, means I am the enjoyer will come. You cannot separate this idea. You cannot think I am the body and not think you are the enjoyer. The moment we say I am the enjoyer, then the false ego comes into picture. Prabhupada says, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita how lust is the enemy that destroys jnana and vijnana. Our ability to understand transcendental knowledge, our ability to go beyond this body is destroyed by engaging our senses with the sense objects. We destroy. Especially if it is not sanctioned in one's own ashrama. So lust is very powerful. The goal of life, human life, is to come out of this lust. And the only way to come out of the lust is to engage in devotion service of the Lord. Because lust is nothing but love for Krishna transformed. This is soul's force. Lust is soul's force. But it is perverted. That force of love that we have, the soul has got, it has to go towards the perfect personality of Godhead, Krishna. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. Millions and billions and countless living entities are centered around one personality who can have that many number of billions and millions of relationships and reciprocations. That is existence. One unlimited and many limited. Many limited are relating with that one unlimited. And that is our constitutional position. So the super soul is there, the soul is there, then the intelligence is there, mind is there, senses are there. The soul and the super soul are Brahman, they are spiritual. Then the intelligence, mind and senses, they are material, energy in this world. The spirit soul has its own spiritual intelligence, spiritual mind, spiritual senses. That is separate. But that is not manifest now. The spirit soul is in imagination, his spiritual mind is in imagination. He is looking at the mirror of the mind, and between the mind and him he is putting one small. Suppose you put a lion face, you stand before the mirror, you put a lion face, and you see through the lion's face. What do you see? You see you look like a lion. And then what do you say? I am a lion. So in the same way, between the mirror of mirror of the mind, you are actually looking at the image inside the mirror and saying that I am lion. The same way, this instrument of mirror of mind, in that instrument of mind, the various perverted, I am the enjoyer kind of egos are reflected. Then we think we are that. So that is how the false ego comes into picture. Prabhupada clearly explains that lusty intelligence is a cause of false ego. First we have intelligence. Then lusty intelligence is a cause of false ego. When there is lusty intelligence, then false ego manifests. As we explained yesterday, false ego is no ego without. False ego means it is active. In the sense, it is not an element which is sitting there like that. When required, it will come. But otherwise, in this yantra, there is Krishna says, your sense, your body, your senses, your mind, your intelligence, then above that is you. But between you and the yantra, either you can directly drive the yantra, your ego can directly drive the yantra, or your ego can drive the yantra through the mask of I am the enjoyer. So in the spiritual world, our senses are serving the Lord, our mind is fully serving the Lord 100%, intelligence is serving the Lord fully, the self, the soul is, the identity is fully serving the Lord. So there is no conflict at all between the mind, the senses, the intelligence and this identity. There is no conflict. In the material world, it's all conflict. In the material world, if the yantra is engaging in sense gratification, then it is against the interest of the soul. Or sometimes even within the material yantra itself, even karmis realize that. I should not unnecessarily, I should not exceed in carnal pleasures. It is going to affect me. Karmis are also very balanced. A good karmi is also very balanced. Balance means what? Not with the soul. He is balancing the three things. What is it? His intelligence, mind and senses. He is balancing for the benefit of his false ego. He does not know he is the eternal servant of Krishna. This is our good fortune. We know who we are. We are the eternal servants of Krishna. So one who is aware of the consciousness that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, that is my eternal position. Then, only then one can experience wholesome happiness. There is wholesome happiness and peace-wise happiness. Let's say you enjoy your senses, flickering sense, for flickering moment you enjoy your senses. What is that? That is not wholesome pleasure. Because you are not senses. You are senses plus mind plus intelligence plus soul. That is your total self. Let's say one part of the body wants one kind of pleasure. And can it do it at the cost of other parts of the body? It cannot. If it does, then you will short circuit the whole organism. So Krishna consciousness gives us wholesome happiness. Not only wholesome in terms of the whole body system, body, mind, soul system, but also wholesome in terms of time. Shreyas, not prayers. Prayers means immediately you may get satisfaction now, but that will cause unhappiness later. So you have to have discrimination. So simply a momentary happiness or momentary pleasure gives pleasure experience does not mean it is genuine pleasure experience. Genuine pleasure experience is wholesome. You take Krishna Prasadam, it is a wholesome pleasure. You take pleasure in working for Krishna, it is a wholesome pleasure. You take pleasure in understanding Bhagavad Gita with your intelligence, it is wholesome pleasure. So there is so much opportunity for us to actually have wholesome pleasure. In a wholesome pleasure, the parts there is no conflict. But in the material body, we are constantly in conflict. Senses want one thing, mind wants another thing, intelligence wants another thing. So Krishna says the only way to control lust is to honor this hierarchy of controlling the lower self by the higher self, control the senses by the mind. Senses should follow what the mind says, mind should follow what the intelligence says, and intelligence should follow what the soul says. What does the soul say? Devotion, service to the Lord. So engage, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So by devotional service, that means the soul, he wants to please the super soul. Please means what? Today, in our conditioned state, what pleases the Lord is what's good for us. It's not that, we are giving him pleasure in a positive way. We are in an imprisoned situation. Just like the father is pleased if the son comes out of the prison. So that is the pleasure of the Lord. So when we perform yajna, devotion service, when we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, it is for our good. We come out of action and reaction and act in the platform of devotion service for the pleasure of Krishna. That is the training that is being imparted in Krishna consciousness movement. That we should not forget. This knowledge is very important when we act. This knowledge when we act in devotion service. This knowledge that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita is very important to control lust. We have to understand this knowledge is a foreground by which we execute our devotion service. So therefore one should understand that devotion service is not performed in ignorance. Devotion service is performed in knowledge. That is the reason we fail to control the senses, because we don't keep the knowledge in the foreground. If knowledge does not help us, where is knowledge? It is the intelligence. It's the highest body. Senses, mind, intelligence. So the intelligence is lusty intelligence or ignorant intelligence. How can it engage in devotion service? It will fail. Because the intelligent directs the mind, mind directs the senses, and one falls down. So as we discussed yesterday, every opportunity that the mind, body or the senses, every situation of urge that the mind, mental urge, sensual urge, intellectual urge to speculate, mental urge to throw our love and affection in wherever we want, sensual urge to satisfy our sensational pleasure. So all these vegas that are there, the forces that are there, how to control them? How to say no to them? It's easy to say no to them, but it will not listen. It will say yes back. You will say no, and the senses, intelligence, everything will say yes. So at the yantra level, you will go on saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And finally, they are all same agents. Intelligence is all the material intelligence, material mind, material senses. Finally, all of them cooperate together. Unless the soul is involved. And who is the soul? What you think now I am the body is not the soul. The soul is actually free from body. The soul is seated in this body, and soul is one who realizes the relationship with the Lord. That is, it's extremely important that we understand that my eternal position is I am loving servant of Krishna. And therefore, when the real soul says no, when the senses say yes, the real soul says no, then we will succeed. Even better than that, chances of success is, the soul should first say no, and then let the senses say yes. Where there is light, there is no darkness. So don't create darkness, then put the light on. Be in light always. Being in light always means saying always continuously yes for devotion service. Yes. Pleasure of the soul is the pleasure of the super soul. Super soul is not, super soul is in everybody's heart. Devotion service is not some hypothetical thing. We cannot see our own soul. We can only see the body. Still we believe that we exist. So on the same level of proof, Paramatma is also existing next to us. Shirodaksha Vishnu is reflecting in each heart. In each Brahmanda, Lord is lying. There is a white pocket of Vaikunta, Sweta Dvipa. That Shirodaksha Vishnu is reflecting in the heart of all jivas. And his reflection is non-different from him. Therefore, he is seated in our heart. Shirodaksha Vishnu is seated in our heart. And he acts as the Chaitya Guru for those who want to come out of this material world. For those who don't want to come out of this world, material world, he maintains the entire universe, he maintains all their desires, he sanctions them, all these things. But those who want to go back to the material world, spiritual world, he gives us the guidance and he gives us the support. So the Lord is there to support. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. If you say no to sense gratification, then this Paramatma will give us the buddhi. So that is a trick. Don't be in conflict. Don't live in a conflict between mind and senses and intelligence. No. If there is a conflict, involve the soul. The soul will win. But the soul to win, you need to have knowledge. What is this soul? Knowledge is very important. Therefore, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the 3rd chapter, what he says one should thoroughly understand that. Everybody asks, what is the solution to lust? Right there he is given no other solution. No other solution. That's the solution. The God himself has given a solution. How to slay this enemy called lust. For that you need to understand your situation. I am spirit soul. I am not this body. At least that knowledge that he is explaining is there, so that at least you know you are fighting. Suppose 4 people are in the ring fighting. Nobody knows who is, everybody is confused. Don't even know what the fight is about. One does not know who is his enemy, who is friend. They are in the ring. They are in the ring. And nothing will come out. No result will come out. So knowledge is very important. When we are fighting the senses, when you are fighting lust, it has to be fought in the foreground of knowledge that God himself has given. Yes, what is happening? This is it is. Here is my senses is a lower self, that's all material body. That has its own forces. Mind has its own forces. Intelligence its own forces. Each life I get different mind, body, intelligence. But I am the same. And I am dear to Krishna. I am not realizing who I am. That is why I am in this problem. I am a pure devotee. Even now I am a pure devotee. Oh, then you put a pure devotee against your false ego. You put a pure devotee against a false ego. If you don't believe that you are potentially a pure devotee, now being trapped with this false ego, potentially you are a pure devotee, because that is our constitutional position. Potentially I am a pure devotee. You have to have that faith, because where do you get that faith from? From the Shastras. Jivera Swarupa, Nitya Krishna Dasa. That is my Swarupa. My Swarupa. I don't know my Swarupa. When I know my Swarupa, I realize that I am a pure devotee. So the fight, you should put up your face as a pure devotee. All that is described by Prabhupada. What is the attitude of a pure devotee? What is the spirit of a pure devotee? What is its attitude towards material enjoyment? What is the goal of a pure devotee? To serve Krishna. When all these things are clear, then it is very easy to conquer the lower self by the higher self. So the key thing in this is that in this conflict of mind, when the sense control comes, the key issue is that you have to empower the soul. The soul has to be empowered. Soul is so powerful. It is part and parcel of Krishna. Soul is so powerful. The position as the eternal servant of Krishna is so powerful. Whatever we think as powerless, these are all material identities. We are powerful to counter the illusory sense-enjoying spirit. That is not our spirit. Those are all unwholesome pleasure or happiness. So one who is, as I said, the spirit soul also has pleasure, also has happiness, but that is wholesome spirit, wholesome happiness. The mind, the senses, the intellect will serve the pleasure of the soul, and the pleasure of the soul is to give pleasure to Krishna. This is a training that we have to undergo. So we can very clearly see, without knowledge it's very difficult. Either you have some extra kripa that directly you get attraction, attachment to Krishna, then automatically you will do only devotion service. You will not serve anybody. Because once you love someone, then everything, you go mad, you will serve only your object of love. But is that a fact for us? No. It is not a fact for us. Therefore, what is that we have to do? We can never be lazy. We have to go on understanding Krishna's words and get that knowledge. With that knowledge, then we should tackle this fight of conflict of senses, conflict of interest of the senses, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and the soul, and always live free from conflict. A stage can come when one can be free from conflict. Even in this material body, one can be free from the conflict. And Prabhupada explains that when such consciousness is clear, then the directions in life, the super soul illuminates the living entity, what he should do for his service, everything. Automatically he'll illuminate within the heart. After that is cleared in our heart, these contaminations. Basic contamination is I am the enjoyer. That contamination should go. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.